an exciting conversation.
Yeah.
We're live? Okay, we are live. So, hello to everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Welcome to Nebeus's fifth Fireside Chat, the analogization of cryptocurrencies. So today we have three exciting panelists who are joining me. My name is Michael Stroev, and I'm the COO and head of product at Nebeus. We have Franklin Noll, Pete Townsend, and Ollie Walsh who are with us. I think I will let you guys present yourselves, tell a little bit about yourselves and what you guys do. So Franklin, to you.
Hi, I'm Franklin Noll. I'm president of Noll Historical Consulting, and we've been advising on the history and the current technology of money, going from banknotes all the way to cryptocurrency. And I've been in this game since 1999, so I've seen a lot of things move along.
Thank you. Thanks, Franklin. Pete.
Hi, I'm Pete Townsend. I'm the founding partner in Norio Ventures. I'm an early stage advisor and investor in fintech and digital assets, also a startup mentor and a podcaster for the podcast Money Never Sleeps. We get inside the minds of entrepreneurs and look at the startup ecosystem around the world. And what I do generally is help startups do three things: get their products to market, get their initial customer base established, as well as get funded. Because it's really hard to get customers without a product. It's hard to get product without funding, and it's hard to get funding. It's hard to get funding without customers, right? So it keeps going around and around and around. So help them do those three things, and at the beginnings of forming an investment syndicate as well to put our money where our mouth is.
Great. We have Ollie Walsh, who is rejoining us. Ollie was part of our fourth Fireside Chat, for those who remember. Ollie, why don't you say a few words about yourself and about Pivot?
So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Pivot Global. We're international cash transactions. So we help migrants support their families at home cheaper and safer. So we're a B2B platform. We work with banks, e-wallets, billers, and e-commerce platforms in emerging markets to enable migrants to pay cash where they live for accounts or services at home. We're a partner with Nebeus, and Pete is also one of our non-exec directors. So I'm full circle here.
There we go.
and I spotted Franklin's article about hybrid cash crypto shortly after our last conversation. I think it was the day after our last Fireside Chat, and we were talking about cash versus crypto. So and that brings us back around to the beginning again.
Yep.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about cash versus crypto, but more like the next step of hybrid crypto banknotes and analogization of cryptocurrencies, and like how crypto and cash aren't competing but potentially merging together. To finish off, as I said, I'm Michael Stroev, COO and head of product at Nebeus. At Nebeus, we bridge crypto and cash. Our main product is crypto-backed loans. We allow people who have cryptocurrencies to use those cryptocurrencies to get loans. That's my short one-liner speech. And to get back to the conversation about hybrid banknotes, I think, Franklin, you are the best person here to kick this off. And first of all, tell everyone what they are and how they work and how they will potentially change the way we interact with cryptocurrencies.
Okay, very briefly, hybrid banknote is a traditional banknote which also has the added electronic network. So say you have $1, a pound, or a euro in your pocket. A hybrid banknote does everything those notes do. You can pass them hand to hand, feed them into machines, et cetera, but a hybrid banknote would have an extra capability to interact with an electronic network. And there's two basic ways this can happen. One, you could have what I term a smart banknote, which would be a traditional banknote with an RFID chip in it, and that chip would talk to a network. Or you could have a different model, which is based on a paper wallet, which we call a crypto banknote. And that banknote would have on it QR codes, one or two. The QR codes represent public and private keys, and you would use those QR codes to scan into your phone, access the e-wallet, and then move the money around that's connected to that. So those are the two basic models that I and my partner, Andrei Lipkin, have come up with. And where shall I go from there?
Can I quickly cut in? So what
Yeah.
are, let's say, the use cases? Because when I hear hybrid banknotes, right, it's kind of, as I said, like the topic of this conversation is analogization of cryptocurrencies, right? So we're taking the digital into the physical, right? But what's the actual use case of that? Why is that needed?
One of the main drivers is CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. It would be very difficult to transition immediately from an all cash situation to a CBDC. A lot of things would happen in there. One of those would be right up front, the disintermediation of the cash industry, which is a very large industry, as you know. There are people who produce them, who handle them, haul them around, keep them safe. So first of all, how are you going to help that industry transition on its own from a traditional banknote to something that's almost purely digital? And I have to back up and say, I'm expecting cash in some form to be around for another generation. It's not going to disappear tomorrow. So we also have to deal with, so we have this payment instrument, a traditional banknote. How are we going to transition that into a digital platform? Because people are not going to just want to give up their cash and move on to their phones and deal with nothing else. Many people would like to, but a lot of other people would not. They're used to cash and they want to hold on to cash. They know how to use it. They know how to budget with it. They know how to keep it safe. They know how to use it in everyday life. Not everybody is ready or able to use their phone for all these purposes. And of course, the other use case, you can't just shift to an all electronic platform, especially if you're one of those people who do not have ready access to the internet or even ready access to electricity. You're pretty much out of the game if your central bank decides to go all digital. So how do you help these people, especially if you're unbanked and do not have the necessary bank account to go into the digital world in the first place? So people who are used to using cash because they don't have an alternative, a hybrid banknote would allow them the option to, whenever they need to, access that electronic network. So that's another case.
Actually,
yeah, go ahead.
If I can cut in again, Ollie, I believe we spoke about this one day. You spoke about cash withdrawals during COVID, that apparently when the pandemic hit, people started withdrawing a lot more cash than usual from banks. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the way that it was fed to the world by the media was that there was a big reduction in the use of ATMs, but what they left out was actually a big increase in the amount of money being taken out. So people were going to the ATM less often, but taking out more money. And it goes to what Franklin was saying there in terms of security of having cash. That when something like a pandemic hits, people stock up on cash because they know it's reliable. It's always going to be there. And for me, I love the idea of the hybrid cash to keep that bit of security for the consumer. That's something they actually readies, and was it last year or the year beforehand? I think Visa across Europe went down for a day, and you couldn't use a card for any transactions.
Yeah.
And in Ireland last year, I'm an Ulster Bank customer here. All the Ulster Bank ATMs and cards went down completely for I think 3 days, and you had to physically go into the branch to get your money out. And that's over reliance on digital. Puts people at risk. It puts consumers at risk. Just not being able to access your money. As we've seen in the last few days, Sweden and Norway, the guys that are always touted as the drivers of the cashless economy have now legislated that cash has to stay in the economy, and that banks have to process cash, and that cafes, shops, restaurants have to accept cash, because the marginalized were being further marginalized. So that's when I read Franklin's article that I just thought this is the missing link, that being able to have cash, that physical access to cash that you can just hand over the counter and buy what you need, but also to be able to transact digitally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I picked up on as well when Ollie sent me Franklin's article. I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. This is the bridge that I've been looking for, right? And that society needs this, and society needs a way to get from analog to digital. So what do? You analogize the digital, right? What you said, Ollie, around the fact that cash is still the world is still very hugely dependent on cash. In the spirit of reading blogs, I had to look back at the Pipit blog from last year, and some of the numbers that you regularly talk about that just have become so commonplace, and I'm hearing big numbers come out of your mouth. It has more meaning to me now that we're talking about it in this light, that 1.7 billion people in 2020 still didn't have a bank account or a mobile money wallet, a financial institution type account, and 1 billion still pay their cash. 1 billion still pay their bills with cash, right? That is a big proportion of the world's population. And it only came down from 2 billion down to 1.7 billion who don't have bank accounts in the year 2014, right? So obviously more people walking on this planet, but still it's not coming down as sharply as we thought. So it's still going to be a thing for a while, and that you can't just pull the plug. Franklin, I think on one of your other blogs, I also noticed you mentioned that with CBDC, okay, if in the US, for example, the way that they're talking about CBDC is that there will be a guarantee that a bank will need to provide a free account, right, for those that want to hold central bank digital currency. But are they also going to provide a free smartphone, right, for those that don't have one?
Yeah.
I think that was your point, and it's a very good question. But I think just, I'm obviously a huge supporter of digital money, and have significant involvement every single day in the whole crypto ecosystem. And so the fact that we're all sitting here talking about what will the analogization of crypto, right, in order to make this truly usable by the wider economy, the wider society, I think it's a good thing to be having this conversation.
And if you do a hybrid banknote, you will get people who are dead fast cash users used to the idea of using digital money. After a while, you'll get used to it. Okay, I have this cash, which I can also do this electronic thing with. And after a while, I may just want to use all the electronic stuff once, I'm up to speed on this. There's a certain comfort level that I think has to be imbued probably in my generation, and a lot of people who are just used to using cash. So that's another thing that a hybrid note could do. You can get people used to using crypto, who usually who just freak out at the word. So it's one way to go.
The middle link in there is, we're kind of gone from cash to hybrid cash, but in the middle is the contactless, which we're all using now in our parts of the world. but that also doesn't work if the network is down. You can't hand your card over to make a payment if the POS machine isn't working. The hybrid node, I think, will accelerate bringing utility to crypto, because it is it's still a bit sci-fi at the moment in terms of how you spend it, or who spends it, or where it's spent, or where it's accepted, and it brings it from the sci-fi realm into reality if it's a note and you can top up or charge your note with credit.
Mm-hmm.
Can I take a small step back and just ask, Franklin, you mentioned that in one of the hybrid banknotes there's a chip, right, that it communicates network. Can you explain how that chip communicates with the network? Because if we're saying that hybrid banknotes are going to allow people that don't have access to a network to use those banknotes, but if that hybrid banknote has a chip that needs to communicate with a network, aren't we still reliant on the network, even if it's not in the user's hand, it's in someone else's hands?
Okay. One thing you have to remember is you're dealing with a traditional banknote. It's denominated. We're not dealing with something that has a fluid denomination. So it can move throughout the economy without connecting to a network. It's acting just like a traditional note. So you could have a hybrid banknote and never attach to an electronic network. There's no need for you to do that. But if you want to, and move value around, say you want to do an overseas remittance and you have this $100 bill and you want to transfer that overseas somewhere, and you have your own account, or you could go to a service and say, I want to move the value of this note, to, I don't know, Poland or wherever. And I hand over my note and they may charge you a small fee for that. Or if you have your own account and your own wallet, you do it over the blockchain without a problem. A lot of what would go on with a hybrid banknote is the system that is running in the back room. How is that going to work? How is the CBDC going to be constructed? What can you do once you attach to that network? And those are still things that need to be figured out by people who are smarter than me. And so, yeah, a lot could be done. And one of the things that brought me to hybrid banknotes was in all the papers that you read about the development of CBDCs, they always say, yes, we'll have this nice electronic thing that we can play with. Oh, but we'll have cash. We'll have traditional cash next door to it. And that really puts a lot of policy limits on a central bank. First of all, you can't go negative on an interest rate. So you always have this zero lower bound because you have cash there, which will pay a zero interest rate, which is a whole lot better than -1. So you need to find some way to remove that lower bound. And if you start remunerating a banknote in some way or another, you can start to do all kinds of cool policy things, say, and you'll start to merge fiscal and monetary policy. Say you have a policy where you want to push investment in green energy. So you set up your banknotes and your CBDCs saying, for this period of time, if you buy something in the green energy sector, you'll get a positive or you'll get a discount on it. Your money will become smart, and you can now start to play with these policy issues. And that's something you can't do with a traditional banknote. Of course, we can start to allied into, okay, now what's going to happen with KYC, AML, anonymity in transactions, because that's one of the first things that a lot of crypto people will bring up to me. Okay, cash is totally anonymous, but once you connect to that network, then it's a whole nother ballgame. are my transactions still going to be private? Is the central bank going to start tracking what's going on?
Well, isn't that the case for developing some of the CBDCs by certain countries?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, with hybrid banknotes, you can choose not to use them electronically. You can choose to just use them as physical cash if you want to. Right. And so you have your completely free use case for handing cash over, which Franklin, as you've mentioned before, is a wonderful invention, right? The banknote. It's, you know, it's fungible, it's storable, it's savable, it's hideable. Dare I say launderable?
Yes, it actually is. In the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, they have washing machines to
Exactly. That's what I
notes.
meant, of course. No one's breaking law here. You know?
But it was a nice double entendre that you pulled out there.
Thank you.
But so again, you have the hybrid banknote here. Am I correct in assuming that you can take your phone, technically press it, it will become digital, then you send it to someone, and then the actual note will become inactive?
Correct. It's inactive or empty. With a traditional note that has a chip in it, you could recharge it. You could move money back from your account back into the note, or you could turn it into the bank and they'll take care of it and reissue the note. Or
in your model, then, with your $100 bill, and you charge it and you send the money, is the $100 bill still spendable? So is it $100 cash and $100 crypto on the same bill, or once you send the funds?
Once you send
the dollar have to be recharged?
The note will indicate very plainly that it has no value. It's just a piece of paper with 100 on it now. My idea is that you can use an icon that's on the note, which will, let's say it'll turn red and it'll raise above the surface of the note saying, yes, this note's good. It has $100 in it. Once you transfer that money off, the icon disappears, and it'll be clear whether you're seeing impaired or not. This note doesn't have any value in it.
Can I get just cut in, because just to follow up exactly what you're saying, one of our viewers just asked a very interesting question. Could you transfer value note to note?
I just don't think the chip technology would allow that. You can only put so much in a 60 micron chip. So it could interact with your phone, and then you take your phone and put it on another note. But I don't think you can put two notes together and have them transfer the value. It would be cool.
You wouldn't have to.
if
It's
you
not
could
inside
do
each
it.
other. You just swap notes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, swap notes. Yeah, right.
I owe you 100 euros. Here's 100.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be very cool to be able to do that. I'm not sure technically you can do that. Maybe at some point in the future you'd be able to do that.
But there would need to be a use case for doing that, I guess, instead of just, if I don't know. Actually,
it being cool is a use case.
No, actually, it being cool, and it being maybe in the future you would be able to customize your own banknotes, or well, actually, no, that's going way too far. I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, what's the use case for me really wanting to keep this particular banknote and transferring the value? The only reason would be that it's unique for, I don't know, for a reason. First, I don't know. Actually, it could be like a limited edition prints, I guess, right? You do get those today.
Some governments will put out a commemorative note of some sort. So it could happen. It won't happen in the US or in the Euro sector, but it could happen somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea for me was that you're paid in cash, right, for something, and you want to move that cash to, with the Pipit use case, Ollie, right? You want to move that cash across borders. You suck the value out of it literally and figuratively, through your mobile, through your smartphone, and it's there in your wallet, and you can send it wherever you want from there, right? So that's why this was particularly intriguing to me, and Ollie, why I think it was obviously particularly intriguing to you as well.
Mm.
And you could also, if you have an empty note, you could send that to someone and they could charge it on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where would people get empty notes? Would there, like, is it you go to like an ATM and give me empty notes, or like how would that happen?
I haven't really thought about that, but Ignacio Mas, who kind of first came up with the idea of this kind of hybrid banknote, said the central bank could just ship out blank notes, either to some kind of vendor or to a merchant, and they could charge them on site and put them out that way. Or you could probably set up a system where you write into the central bank and say, please send me so many blank notes of these denominations, and they'll send them to you, and it's up to you to get them charged.
Interesting. In terms of
in your model, Franklin, in the US, you'd only be able to charge it with the reserves digital currency, or would it be multi-currency options on a single bill?
Actually, that's a good question.
That's a great idea.
Not to put you under pressure now or anything with your questions.
I don't think that would fly because, well, you might be able to do some kind of private issue where, Bitcoin and Ethereum or something like that, you could put these different. No, you couldn't do it because part of the point is that it's denominated, and it's denominated in a certain currency. And it's denominated not just for usage hand to hand, so you clearly know what the value is. It's also when you are dealing with banknotes, you have to have a certain distribution of denominations in an economy. You can't have all hundreds, and you can't have all ones. The Treasury and the Fed here in the US think a lot about, okay, what's the distribution of the denominations? What's in demand? What is not? And that's why I always say it should be denominated. That's one of the reasons why. And if you start trying to mix different currencies on it, the values will start to fluctuate, and you'll have a problem. Plus, you can't, certainly a CBDC won't sit well with a private crypto. The central bank will not allow such a thing to happen.
We saw the effects of taking down denominations out of circulation in India 2 years ago, and literally overnight the government withdrew or made invalid all, I think it was 5 and 10, the equivalent of 5 and 10 euro notes, and caused chaos. And the reason they did it was they thought it was cash was used mainly by criminals, but when people handed in the notes, about 99% of the notes were accounted for. So the amount of black market cash was dramatically less than they had anticipated, and they caused absolute chaos in their economy and literally in their streets. So the denominations are important, definitely.
Well, you certainly could have different cryptos issuing their own notes. There's no problem with that. You could have Bitcoin notes, you could have Ethereum notes, you could have, I don't know, algo notes, or whatever, if a foundation wants to go that way. And there are certain advantages to that. Or let's say we just stay with Bitcoin. One thing, if the Bitcoin Foundation went to start issuing lots of notes and denominated in Bitcoin or Satoshis or whatever, one, if you start to lock up enough of the value, that should help stabilize the value on the exchanges. If that Bitcoin is not interacting with the blockchain anymore, and it's not for sale on an exchange, it's sitting, in these notes basically, that it may well stabilize the value overall. And plus, you could very well lower the carbon footprint of Bitcoin. Say, especially with the proof of work, the energy is used up when a Bitcoin is entering the blockchain or the transaction is being worked on the blockchain. Now, if those Bitcoins are on hybrid banknotes and they're just passing hand to hand and never interact with the blockchain, that mining is not occurring. And if you want to be super eco-friendly, you make your Bitcoin note on a paper substrate like the US dollar, which is linen and cotton, which are renewable resources. And if you fiddle with the ink enough, you could probably make it totally biodegradable and maybe compostable. So you could have a really green crypto if you wanted to go that way. You're saving the energy, plus you're using a renewable resource. And if you do your mining with solar power or something like that, you've got it made.
Or you're mining using volcanoes.
Yeah, geothermal.
Yeah,
and I think the carbon neutral debate, right, of cryptocurrency, I think has been overcooked a bit, right? And I think there's been, if you over the last couple of months, especially with Elon Musk coming out, and I don't think that Elon Musk involvement in Bitcoin would have actually removed Tesla from the ESG indices out there, right? But there's a lot of myths out there. And does Bitcoin use energy? Absolutely. Does it use more energy than people exchanging cash hand to hand? Absolutely. Does it use more energy, though, than everything that Square, Stripe, PayPal, any other big fintech that you can think about use combined to power digital finance, right? To power the digitalization of money as it is in the traditional sense? I've never looked at the numbers. I don't know, but I've got to expect that it's not a huge difference, if at all. Now, some of the numbers that have been drawn out have said that, well, Bitcoin at 300,000 transactions a day, if you go up to the scalability of what the world would need for that, you're using all the world's energy, but there's no linear relationship between a transaction and the amount of energy that is used, because mining is different than actual transactions on a blockchain. That being said, if you're thinking, I really like that idea of, if you take crypto off of the network, right, and turn it into paper, turn it into a banknote, that is going to have some side effects that I had never thought about yet, which is a bit of mental gymnastics to get going on. So thank you for introducing that, Franklin.
Yeah, I'm waiting for a call from El Salvador to start producing Bitcoin banknotes now.
Absolutely. No, I think you'll be first in the queue.
Guys, I'm going to cut in and ask another question that another viewer is asking. What are the steps to help the industry ease into crypto notes? Like, how would it start? Because obviously today it's a concept that just me, the four of us are discussing, and obviously a few blog articles are written about, and it has some history, of course, but it's not that widespread. How would you really get it rolling? I mean, it's not that simple. Or is it?
Nothing's that simple. Well, let's go to central bank digital currencies, because it might be clearer that way. Because we all know dollars, and we all know how those transactions work. My thought is you would create a hybrid banknote, either a smart banknote with a chip or one based on the paper wallet model, and you would probably introduce it into circulation at a certain point. Let's say in the US, all the hundreds start to be smart. You start there. That might have the most utility. And people will start to see these notes circulating around and get used to the idea. And then you would drop into the 50, and then to the 20. and it become more widespread, and you're kind of pushing traditional banknotes out of circulation, and the new smart ones are coming in. And this will give the Fed more flexibility in its policies, and it'll have better control over, you know, dealing with a zero lower bound if they have to, things like that. And of course, a lot of this is, and it would be the same with any crypto company, how are you going to build up what's going on in the back room? What's going to be the design? What devices are you going to use to interface with the note? How are you going to set up the different digital accounts? Does each note have its own particular wallet that goes with it, or is it connecting to a pool of some sort? So there's a lot of ideas that have to go on in the back. And are you going to use a DLT, or are you going to use a centralized ledger? There's all these great ideas that you need to figure out.
Mhm.
But on the user end is where, you know, I'm really focused from my experience too. As you're introducing these new notes, you're rolling out this public education campaign. What are these notes? How do you recognize a good one? How do you use them? Take it to your bank and, you know, do this with it, or use the new app on the phone that the Fed's putting out. Use this Fed and explore your new note. You know, what can you do with it? Things like that. It's really a matter of the technology and the education as you kind of reimagine this payment arena where you're dealing with notes, legal tenders, or even if you're moving towards stable coins. You know, what if the old Libra, before they changed it, what if Libra wanted to introduce a note along with their stable coin? Besides making, you know, a lot of central bankers very nervous, they could really, you know, take over the world because they have these two payment platforms which interact so nicely, and they can take on a sovereign currency head on. So yes, there's a lot of questions to be answered as you make that transition.
Could the rollout of the notes be, could it be compared to the rollout of the euro, which I think was 1999, was it? Where overnight 15, 16, 17 currencies became redundant and everybody had a new currency in the morning. There was a huge educational campaign behind that. I mean, it was probably 2 years of education, lots of different currency conversions, comparing the lira to the Irish pound in terms of currency conversions. But it was literally an overnight success once they launched it. You know, there is a new technology involved, but it's a new technology involved. But what you got in your hand is still $100.
Yes, and for most users, it's just going to be a small design change. You know, it's not a completely different thing. It's still a euro note, but it may have a QR code on it, or it may have a chip in it, and that's not really that big a deal. So you could do that. Just in the U.S., it's a far more gradual process. The Fed and the Treasury do not do an overnight conversion like that. They like to slowly trickle things in. And part of that is because so much of US currency is overseas. And so you just can't do such a quick change, or, you know, the people in Romania with their stacks of $100 bills are going to wonder, you know, are these good yet, or are they not? For the US, it's more of a slow transitional thing. But
Yeah,
in the Euro world, if you can pull that off, that's great.
I think it is going to be an educational thing. And Ollie, you know how I feel about Revolut, but I'm going to use them as an example, right? In that Revolut has taken over Ireland. I think there's over 1 billion users of Revolut now in Ireland, and everybody's using it to pay each other, right? And what not many people know is that if you get close enough to somebody, which we've been not doing much of in the last year and a half, but if you get close enough to somebody, you can just select on Revolut this pay nearby me, pay those near me option. And it's not that easy to find, but when you do, you don't actually have to input anybody's mobile number. You can just say, oh, here's my code. You're close enough to me. I can pay you that 20 euro for my kid's hurling, hurl, right? As we call it here.
I tried it. It didn't work.
but I did it buying a bike, right? From, someone in a bike shop, in a recyclable bike shop.
And it worked.
And I showed somebody how to use it, that I was paying for this hurl, which is, for non-Irish viewers today, is hurling, which is a Gaelic sport, right? Anyway, I think it's going to be the same thing where I show my mom or my dad or whomever, my dad's probably going to figure this out before me, right? That, okay, here's how you actually take your phone and you take this £100 note, $50 note, whatever, and you digitalize it, right? And it's there, it's popped up on your screen. And they're doing so much now with smartphones that don't require apps, right? Where there's little applets that just pop up on your phone when something happens. There's a fintech startup here called Strike in Ireland that are doing that with tipping, where you have a little QR code on somebody's badge to pay for Deliveroo and be able to give them a tip when they arrive at your house. And you just hold up your phone, a little applet pops up, and you can give them, a 5 or 10, whatever, boom, right to them. And I think we're going to see some of those same types of things that happen. But in all seriousness, I just can't imagine, when we look back on this 100 years, that the smartphone is still going to be around. I think the smartphone is as much of a bridge for digital money as a hybrid banknote will be.
So what's going to happen to smartphones?
We're going to have something else. Whether it's wearables, whether it's something, we just aren't going to rely on something this clunky, right? Actually, to carry around with us all the time to pay for stuff.
I always pay with my watch, actually.
There you go. Right. So maybe that is, part of the next step. But, not everybody has a nice watch like you do. Right. And when we're thinking about that billion in the world that don't have bank accounts, I'm pretty sure they don't have watches either. Or maybe they have a nice Timex. And I did hear that Timex were embedding some payment mechanisms into their watches. Right. But I'm rambling.
The whole Revolut transferring value just makes me wonder, can the new hybrid dollar bill be hacked?
Be hacked?
I was thinking that as well when I was reading Franklin's article.
Yeah.
That's a concern. That's a serious concern, and that's something that will have to be worked out if you go down the chip route, the smart banknote route. The Mu chips that I think Hitachi put out, they had a effective range of about 3 millimeters, so you actually had to touch it. So it wouldn't be a casual hack. You would have to have the equipment and be able to figure out how to get in there and play with it. But, this can be done. And also, let's say you're using the chip note and it has the icon on it. How can you make that icon pop up without there being anything on that note? Again, there's a whole lot of anti-counterfeiting stuff that needs to be thought about, and security that needs to be thought about. And even with the banknotes we have now, there's always a balance being struck between how secure do we make this note and how do we still make it as functional as possible. There's a lot that goes on, or that is engineered into a note that we never see. And there's a lot of little things embedded in it that make it more secure and more easy to pass through cash processing plants. Now, this was the concern of my partner, Andre Lipkin. So he came up with the other idea of just using the QR codes and have no chips at all. And so you get rid of this problem. Plus, if you're just putting QR codes on, you can basically use current printing equipment to do it. You don't have to develop anything new. It's the back end where the development would have to occur with the crypto and the interfaces and things like that. So if you have a crypto note, which has the public and private key on it. The public key is a QR code, which is visible. The private key is a QR code, which is under a foil. And right now, banknotes have these foils on them. There's nothing under them. They're just for to hold a hologram or the security process. Let's say if you want to transfer a note there, you remove the foil cover, you have the public and private key, you scan those in, you can access the e-wallet, and you're good to go. Now, the problem is that note is then shot. You can't reissue it again because you've removed the foil key or the cover. So everybody knows there's no value in this thing anymore, or it's at least been compromised. So that's one problem. Now, his other idea was a crypto bill, which only has the public key on it. And if you want to transfer the value of that note, you have to take it to an issuer or a representative of that issuer, and they'll scan in the public key, they'll handle the private key and give you access. That note could be reissued just like a regular note until it wears out. And that can be run on whatever presses are in the printing houses right now. Adding a QR code to a design is not that big a deal. Again, it's what's happening in the background, which is where all the engineering is going to take place.
Mm. But we're still, again, down the road, we're still very reliant on a network, correct? Mm-hmm. Somewhere, wherever it is. And I have a thought. How do we stop the trading of hybrid banknotes that have no value? Because imagine, again, Ollie, maybe you can comment on this. Undeveloped countries get a hold of these super cool new hybrid banknotes. Not all the population have access to a network. And these banknotes become hyper valuable. And then the population just starts trading, using them to trade, to transact, when the banknotes have zero value locked into them because they can't connect to a network because the population, most of the population, again, doesn't have access to a network. How do you combat that particular situation, and should you combat it?
I mean, cash is really a construct. It represents a value. So if people in a market have a lot of these notes and they have no value and they decide they're worth trading, it essentially becomes a barter system and it's back to functioning as cash as it always does.
Yeah.
So I mean that $10 at one stage represented $10 worth of gold somewhere in a vault, and in the 70s it doesn't. So I mean it's just a mental construct that this bit of paper is worth money. So you get back to the beginning again.
Yeah, I actually, a couple of years ago, after all this time, dog years in the crypto space, I realized I didn't know what the word fiat actually meant. So I looked at it, and fiat just means something's worth something because somebody says it is.
Yeah.
Right. So
it works for a car as well.
Exactly. Everything is worth what somebody's willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
But no, I get that point.
Yeah, you could certainly trade in these empty notes. The only point where the friction occurs is if you want to actually convert them into good notes, and that's when the big discount hits. When you take them to the broker and say, okay, I want to convert this this empty $100 bill into something that's actually worth something, let's say a full-blooded bill, what's the discount that I have to take on it for it to happen? And this really reminds me of the early 19th century US, which I wrote about, and as you know, I wrote about. And you had all these notes just flying around the economy, and you had no idea whether the bank that issued them had any money at all or was even in business anymore. You were just happy to have a note that you could use in everyday commerce. And I could see the same model happening. And it would just be down to the brokers and what discount you have to take on it at some point.
Yeah, that was a really interesting post, and I recommend that people read it as well. And it's Franklin's next one on comparing what's going on right now with stablecoins to this era of U.S. history that Franklin just mentioned, where and talking about the bridges, right, and the bridge of a hybrid banknote between the analog world of cash and the digital world of cash, and that you've got this, at that point in time in American history, you had this fledgling ecosystem of finance that was less than 100 years old, right? And it was expanding at leaps and bounds. People fighting for land sounds a lot very familiar to the whole crypto space right now, right? And thinking about all those different banknotes and thinking about all the different stable coins that are out there right now, all those banknotes consolidated into one. I think stablecoins become something that are largely unnecessary when you have central bank digital currency, right? They're filling a very good void right now, which is, how do I get out of crypto without getting out of the crypto ecosystem completely, and get into, just more on the institutional trading side, where you're getting out overnight at the end of the day when you're not going to trade it anymore, right? So there's some nice similarities there going back into history that I think are really interesting. And like we always say, it's happened before and it'll happen again.
So what would happen to the value of stablecoins when CBDCs are like widely launched?
I don't want to say nothing, right? But I think that gradually, it's not going to be overnight like the euro, right? Where all of a sudden, boom, tomorrow, central bank digital currency.
That's true.
It's going to be, this is coming. We'll see what Tether does, right? And how long that takes for them to figure out what they're going to do. But I fully expect that in my crypto wallet or in my digital wallet, I will be able to see, my Bitcoin alongside my digital dollar, alongside my digital euro, alongside my 401k holdings in my US retirement account that have all been digitalized or tokenized for that matter, alongside my Irish pension fund. And I'm able to have that full relationship with my money on my phone right here in front of me. And I can spend it using my phone by tapping, or my watch, like you, Michael. Or I can send it internationally, or I could send it to the person next to me, right? Through, and whatever the technology is that it's called to enable you to do that. Bluetooth, right? I don't know. But no,
That's digital again. That's digitalization, not analogization.
Yeah, it is. But the point being that I can now also opt to live in this world where if I do need to use cash, if I do need to pay for that recycled bicycle in 200 euro cash, right? Because they don't want to have anything electronically, then I can do that, right? I still am going to have, I expect for the rest of my life, and hopefully that's a long one, that there will be a full need for me until the day I die for me to use cash in some way, shape, or form. I fully expect that.
It's true. We all get into situations where we always need that cash, and but it's rarer every single year. Like
it is,
yeah.
It is, and I my wallet right here, right? I have a 10 euro note sitting in there for the longest time. I'd rather just be able to. I don't want to go to the bank and do anything with it. Just let me extract the value out of that through a QR code, and I'll get it into my eMoney wallet. Wonderful. I'm happy.
I have the same 10-euro note.
The position is primarily a Western one, so there is a large part of the world who don't have that digital wallet or a bank account at all, and that's where we come in. That's the cash part of the world, which is 52% of the population.
Yep, and I fully expect that. And Ollie, just referencing your blog again, half of that population live in 7 countries, right? And it's not Ireland. And just to remind people, it's not 1 billion people in Ireland that are using Revolut. It's 1 million. I was speaking in Satoshis there. But half of the population living in those 7 countries: Bangladesh, China, India, Indonesia, Mexico, Nigeria, and Pakistan, right? And all of that kind of rings true. And that's, how are we going to get the other 70% of the world to move to full digital money? Are we just going to leave everybody else behind? Hell no. Right? We need a solution for everybody. So,
but still, again, like, what's the solution with the hybrid banknote if there's still a network that it's reliant on? I'm sorry, I keep on pushing this network idea because it's really like I'm a crypto guy, and I strongly believe in the digital, and like that country or that person or a certain entity is still going to need a network in order for those people to be able to use those hybrid banknotes in that particular country.
Well, they're still fungible between individuals, and that's the whole beauty of it for me, is that you can convert it into digital form, or you can continue to use it in physical form for as long as you want, right? And like we were talking about a few minutes ago with just well, I don't think we'll end up with a barter system, but giving people the option to be able to just spend money using cash, but with that cash able to be converted into digital form, if the individual has the means to do so, that's a strong option. If the individual does not have the means to do so, let them continue to use it as hard cash.
Yes, just because the network exists doesn't mean you have to use it.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm sure
for most people, it would just be a perk. I'm going to use cash like I do every day of the year, but this one time I really need to use it electronically, and I have that ability. And I may have to go to the corner post office to do it, but that's okay. And that'll be the one time I use that feature. Otherwise, I'll just use it as regular cash every day.
So would hybrid banknotes replace bank cards in this case? Because if you can kind of, let's say, transfer money onto the note and then pay for it. Well, actually, no, you're giving away the banknote, whereas the card, you just tap, right? So that's the difference, and you keep the banknote, right?
Also, it's denominations as well. So you couldn't have 1,000 euros in your bank account that you've represented on a single hybrid note.
What? So, but actually, that's a good question. Would hybrid banknotes have limits? Like, say, like, again, like one Bitcoin is worth like a lot more than 100 euros. So if I wanted to put like one Bitcoin onto a banknote, would that work, or is that way too much, and we're going to restrict that because that's just an insane amount of money?
Well, we're going to keep two denominations. And the denomination sets the limit. Well, it's a discrete unit. You can't like have $5 on a $10 note. It has to be 10 or nothing. Otherwise, it becomes, you basically have a debit card at that point.
Okay. Yeah. Hence.
And you don't know. This was an idea that came up way back in 2010 when Consult Hyperion was looking at the problem. And they came up with an option of having a hybrid banknote which had a display on it. And basically it acted as a debit card. You could have any value you wanted on that hybrid banknote that Consult Hyperion put together. And they also said, well, you can put it on a card then. You don't need an actual banknote on a polymer or a paper substrate. But you run into a lot of problems then. One is the denomination issue. You really can't move it hand to hand because your pound note has like 3 pounds 15 on it. How are you going to use that in everyday transactions? Or if it's a card, that's something completely different from a note psychologically, if nothing else. And you can't always feed it into machines. You're basically putting the cash industry or the security printers out of business. So there's a lot of problems moving to that platform.
But what could be a great bridge between this, to solve this issue of like the quantity that you can store on this hybrid piece of paper, checks.
Please no.
There you go.
Please no.
True. France, like for example, France is still highly reliant on checks. I think US is as well. No, a lot of people still get salaries in an actual paycheck, that you go and deposit in a bank, that are not limited to an amount, right? To a specific amount, and it's written to a certain person. So we can have hybrid crypto bank check notes.
Or you make the check out to cash, and then you just circulate it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then take a picture with your phone, which you can do already. Right?
Yeah. So I think I think all of these things are so interlinked. Cash, checks, like past, what we had in the past, what we have now, where we're going in the future. It's still, there is a big use case for like the checks. I'm sure there's a use case. 100% sure. As the banknotes, and I agree that they should be like limited to the denomination. But there's a use case for both, because imagine I do want to make a large purchase, and for some reason, like it's a Bitcoin. I don't know. Like I want to buy a Tesla, right? Elon Musk, what was it like? Well, 1 Bitcoin, whatever, 2 Bitcoins, boom, check, done. Maybe some people are more used to that, receiving salaries, right? Imagine, like, again, some people probably have that use case, and yeah, I think our past is going to kind of like build into that, to our present, and possibly like our future. So long silence. I think that was my closing speech. Actually, it's been it's been an hour. So I think that was my rounding up and closing speech. So let's wrap it up. Unless anyone wants to pitch some last closing words.
Nothing from me. Just be good to each other.
Okay, well, in that case, to all our viewers, thank you for joining. I hope that this conversation was super interesting. It very much was for me. Panelists, everyone, thank you for joining. This was very, very exciting, and I'm very intrigued to see where this will lead. After this, like before this conversation started, I was very like skeptical on the whole idea. Now I'm actually more inclined to what I said, that it's like our past is probably going to build into this future, and there is definitely a place for these hybrid banknotes or hybrid check notes. Franklin, please, if you do release those hybrid check notes, make a special edition one under my name.
We'll write the first one out to you, Michael.
Yeah, I possibly coined the concept now.
I think you did.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.